Welcome to the Breath of Life podcast. I'm Yulia. Here, we explore the world and our place in it through the lens of interconnectedness. If we could feel part of the living world, not just intellectually, but in our bones, if our breath could sync with the larger rhythm of life, how would that change the way we live, work, and make decisions? Join me for conversations with people who live and work from that place. Hey, Kat, and
Hi.
thanks a lot for being here. And today we're going to be talking about non-duality. Maybe we'll start actually with what it is or how Kat kind of sees it, because I've seen and know that you published that everyone is allowed their own view of non-duality, right? Yeah, and so we'll see where the conversation will lead us. And I'll just quickly introduce Kat, and she will then say a couple of words about herself. But she's an author of quite a few books. I've put them down. Beyond Illusions, Seeing No Self, Selfless Leadership. And she's also an author on Substack, maybe someone else. I got to know Kat's work via LinkedIn. And the first was curious, and then something kind of along the same lines happened to me and to my views of the world. So very curious to exchange today. And if we have people here, if they want to ask questions, that would be also very welcome. So again, thanks, Kat. Welcome. And maybe you could start by just a short intro, maybe your story, like what had to happen for you to be here, yeah, with this topic.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Story is always the correct word because it's a story. So I can tell a long version or a short version. I can also say I don't know, which is also true. It's who am I and what do I do has various possible answers, and they all feel untrue. So I don't know. The socially correct version is I'm 49. I spent 20 years of my life in organizations, doing organizational development and coaching and training and workshops and all those classic change things. I was actually quite good at it and enjoyed some of it. And at a certain point, it ended. And I found myself talking about this and writing about this more and more. And in parallel, the official stuff ended. Even the coaching at some points, which I was doing then freelance, on my own, coaching leaders. That's where the book Selfless Leadership emerged. That stopped. And now I always say I write and I talk to people who insist on talking to me. And it's just spontaneous. Yeah. So it's fun and it's the way it is. And I wouldn't want it any other way. I don't know if that helps.
Sure, yes. And what you said about that there are stories, that there are a lot of versions of us that, and probably at one moment, one version wants to be here and then another version. But also there is, of course, this social interface that that has to be there. So, like in terms of yeah, what is non-duality for you? So we still will be going through some things that need a social interface. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, the essence of non-duality is that we experience the world as dual, as a subject and object. So there's a me that's aware of a world out there, And this me is, we learn various things about it, that I am a separate self with a character, with attributes, with a history, with a past, with a future. And non-duality is the insight that this is an illusion. There is not really a separation between me, the subject of life, and life. There's not a separate individual or person who experiences all of this and can manage and control it. There's really just life. And there's the, due to the way we are in this world, due to the human body and its attributes, we experience the world as though we are separate from it. And seeing that this is not true, so that it's an illusion, it's true, it's real, but it's not the way things actually are. That removes the psychological suffering and the pain of feeling that I am a person in a body who needs to do my life and get it right and be a good person and develop myself. Because I realized by seeing that there really is no one separate there. There is no one to improve. There is no one who has to get things right or be better, be nicer to other people, reach a higher frequency. All of these ideas that we have about what the self is supposed to do are seen to be just imagination, illusion, and that's unbelievably freeing.
Okay, so I have a couple questions, and I'll start with it is an illusion, and it is an illusion that I guess is quite challenging to see beyond. So how do you see beyond that? If I'm here, like I have tasks to do, I have challenges in my life, I have, I guess, people and animals also that depend on me. So how do you do that?
Well, there's always right now a part of us or an aspect of this experience that is aware of it. So if someone asks you later, did you have a conversation with Kat and what was that like? You can tell them because you're here experiencing it. We totally ignore that aspect. We think it's obvious. Yeah, of course I'm alive and there's an awareness experiencing that. And we think, but we've learned to believe that that awareness is us and that it's limited to the body. So the way to see through the illusion is to first realize that there is this awareness of what is going on, and then to start looking directly at it, and not looking in the sense of using your eyes visually, but to start noticing it, like right now while I'm speaking, or right now while you are hearing me speak, something is aware of that. Something is noticing that, taking note of it. And that is really where it all starts, because we're usually ignoring that and focusing completely on the content of experience. And the more we start to notice what is aware, the more we start to realize that that's always there. There's always this awareness, until eventually we start to see that the awareness comes before the experience of the person, of the self. And so we don't really come to see through the illusion. We come to see that the illusion happens inside of what we are, inside of something larger.
Okay. So again, if we were to go back to the example that I'm aware now that I'm having a conversation with Kat. So can you just again walk me through this? Where do where does the illusion end? Is that yeah, no, that's the best.
So,
Yeah.
so if right now you would close your eyes and you're still experiencing my voice and this conversation, but if we close our eyes, we are already getting rid of a huge part of the content.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at, just notice what is experiencing, so the sense of aliveness that is aware of what is going on right now, of the voice, the sounds, the thoughts, the sensations in the body, something is aware of that. And it's just noticing that. Okay, there's awareness, there's an aliveness, the experience itself is happening. And one of the ways to start seeing how expansive that is to try to look for an end to it. Like, where does that, if I travel sort of in my imagination, can I find a border to that awareness or experience of aliveness? Can I find an edge to it? Where does it end? With these types of experiments, in their various versions, this is one. And there are many, many ways of exploring this, what is aware, the presence, the pure presence of being here, where we gradually start to see that, oh, this might not be what I think it is.
Okay. So that is for me very interesting, that the way you talk about it, because I I I guess my experience of non-duality maybe has to do with something that's called animism, something that where basically the world is alive, and at every given moment I can, if I choose to, open up, receive the signal, let's have merge my experience with the bigger pulse of life. And I could do that through senses, for example. So that was for me an example that really spoke to me, because it's about sensing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so in light of that, or in this context, what if we were to look at the bigger picture? So if we like abstract from ourselves and our experience, what does this make this world? Again, we're seeing it as like a city of Berlin, my home, things like that. So beyond that, what is the world or the universe?
It's difficult to explain, because as soon as we start talking about it, all language is dualistic. So we talk about it in terms of, even though I try then not to use the word I, it still sounds like there's a subject and the world, which is the object. So it's almost impossible to talk about this. And the direct seeing of it actually solves all questions. But that doesn't help for alive, right? So, so with that sort of footnote, um, the only way to kind of talk about this is the world appears in what I am. And what I am, I'm now speaking of this infinite aware presence that sees or notices or knows this body appearing, that body appearing, everything else appearing. And when you talk about it, again, it sounds like, I don't know, now I went nuts and think I'm some sort of absolute entity. But I'm not speaking of myself. I'm speaking of this being, a being that is everything. And some traditions would call it God. And then the ultimate blasphemy is to say, I am God. But what we essentially are is divine, in the sense of the absolute, everything. And so the world becomes that, or is that. It's really about seeing, as soon as I see the end of the separateness in myself, in this apparent self, I stop seeing the separation in everything else. So there's no longer me versus the world. There's no longer Julia versus Pat. There's no longer the cat versus Pat, or the tree versus the dog. Um, it's one, and one is the wrong word for it.
That is, now you spoke with the word something about this illusion that the division, right? That there is no separate. There is someone that I follow, Hugh Hadley, and he is an integral anatomist. So what he has done the last whatever 20 years has been dissecting bodies and basically exploring and what is it there. We have our notions about, what a heart is or what skin is. And what he's saying is nothing is separate, um, but only in our, as mental construct in our mind. So basically what he's seeing, uh, experiencing through senses even, it's that the heart is one with the lungs and with the diaphragm, and like everything is everything. It cannot be separated. interesting that you were saying that. And also, I was going to ask you, so how you were talking to it, could we say, just for the social representation, that this is a big body that we are part of? And let's say I'm here somewhere, this cell on the skin, and at any time, for example, if I get burned, then I feel the burning sensation. But then if I'm in the sun, under the rain, or near a flower, let's say my sensation is different, but I'm still like part of this
Yeah.
the model. If
Yeah.
not, then this is what came up for me.
No, it's an analogy that is used quite a lot. Like the classic one is I'm a wave in the ocean. So I am the whole ocean, but I am one movement in it that for a long time might believe it is a separate something, but is actually just water, just like the rest of the ocean. Or I believe I'm a separate cell in an organism. But I really can't find any separation between my local experience, which is the experience then of the cell, and the whole organism. So because of the way we perceive as humans biologically, we perceive at a certain level, and that makes it seem, which makes sense because it allows us to survive, that we are separate human bodies and that we need to deal with this body and move it through space and get things done. But there is, at the same time, we can see the overall and know the overall, not see. Seeing is sometimes too much interpreted as we can't see it visually, but we can know that the limitations that we perceive, I feel apparently this finger, I feel my body, that is an experience within everything, and that I am just as much everything as I am this local experience.
So, what now I'm thinking about the book, for example, that you wrote about selfless leadership and your experience in companies again of leadership. So, what does it make to leadership if we have this awareness, if we gain this awareness? Like, what happens to self-development and all this stuff?
Well, I love something my friend and colleague says. Yuri says, non-duality by itself is utterly useless, and I think that's very true in a way. You know, if it becomes a philosophy and it becomes like, oh yeah, I'm everything, great. You know, now what? I still have to make dinner. I still have to leave my tea. So the aspect that I found that is the most freeing of this is really seeing that there is no separate doer, no self that is in control. And this is where it gets really interesting for leadership and organizations, because organizations are based on control. And we have this whole idea, it's so entrenched that to be someone, whether that's a leader or just successful or have a good career, I need to manipulate, control, get things done, entrench my habits, improve myself, you know, all these things of a person, a self doing things to themselves. And that's how we see leadership. So I'm a leader if I can get things done, not only in myself, but through other people and with other people. And non-duality is the insight that is complete bullshit. It is actually the most limiting thing that we can think of, is to try to control what is not controllable. And to me, that's the solution for all the leadership failure and all the organizational failure that I saw in my career for 20 years and that we're still stuck in. Trying to, okay, Julia, we're going to do a project together. You know, we're going to achieve this goal. And now the whole thing is about trying to get you to do what I want you to do. And then to put it in some kind of sauce of, but I'm really doing this for you. Or I'm really serving you or the organization or something greater. But it's really all about me. And the only way out of this is not for a self to kind of try to get rid of itself or to make itself smaller or more humble or more service oriented. A self can't make itself selfless, but we can see the non-dual truth that there actually is no real separate self with control. And then suddenly there is simply the unfolding of life, which includes life in organizations, includes relationship at work, and it's free. It's effortless. It flows. There's the other really important aspect is that I stop making myself or other people guilty for what they're doing. Julia, you should really work on that project more. Or how come you didn't achieve this? Well, no, it didn't happen. So let's just work with the reality that is here without having to punish someone for it, myself or the other. So there's a whole world that opens up that is much more respectful, easeful, selfless service comes to the forefront without a self that wants to do this as some sort of moral achievement. It's just how the world works when we stop believing that we're a self in control of it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, how does this then emerge, this unfolding? Because you do have who report to you and who are supposed to work for you. Also, all of us have, let's say, personal faults or whatever things that we consider very annoying, inconvenient, also for getting the job done. So, like, how does it flow? Yeah.
The question how stops making sense, right? Because it just flows the way it flows. And just as we have flaws now, we have flaws all the time, and things that are helpful for a goal and things that are unhelpful. But if you have certain characteristics that are unhelpful for the goal, will I be able to address this more intelligently if I believe that it's your fault or if I don't believe that it's your fault? So taking the judgment out of it and this trying to make things happen and control things, it just creates a much more direct interaction with reality. And that is beneficial in all situations. If I can just deal with what is, with love and the knowing that we are all connected, instead of trying to do something to you or to make you do something.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, because again, I'm now again referencing something that I've experienced. It is something that I guess happens when you immerse yourself in nature and you just realize it really engage um, deeply, like with survival, for example, experiences, or with gardening, where you let go of your conviction that it's you who are the boss and you are deciding where the plants live or what happens in the forest. And this is a very kind of like social experience, I guess, because for me, it's very visceral, where I understand, well, actually, it doesn't happen this way at all. I was at a conference recently, Urban Topics about plants, and almost everyone, and people just do gardening and things like that, they shared, well, I cannot decide for the plant where it's gonna pop up. And I can just invite maybe by sitting in all places and then be a place where the plant is welcome. Um, and also when you go to the forest and you have to, whatever, like make fire, but there is rain, and that your strategy is going to be completely different. And this is, I guess, is that something? It's like where you flow and you are very aware of this big pulse of life, let's say, that is happening, and you are just somewhere near there. Is it?
Yeah, it's more the absence of the illusion that you are making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So taking gardening as an example, it's not just the end of the illusion that you are making the plants grow and you're managing the whole thing. Look what I did to this flower. There we kind of see how absurd that is, but we think we can do that to other people. It's not only that, it's also that I see that I do not control whether I have the idea to plant this plant here or to what. Maybe I read something in a magazine. Maybe I know something from experience, but that's not up to me. That's just how it unfolds. So even the whole idea of, am I a good gardener or am I a good leader, or I don't know. I am not a someone. I am an unfolding of processes within systems within bigger systems. It's all just, yeah.
Okay, and I guess then the question from there is about thinking, because this is, well, first of all, we often come to associate thinking with us. And when we do realize that, let's say, I was inspired by something in my thinking, or this thought came from there, it's still kind of like really difficult to give up the old thinking. And it seems like that there is sensing that you mentioned, that where this experience of not being in control, life unfolding, can be sensed. And then on the other hand, thinking that kind of thing makes us stuck in that illusion. Would that be the case?
Yeah.
So what's your take on thinking?
Thinking is an addition onto reality. So I don't know a lot. Okay. So there's nothing I can say really with, oh, this is how it is. But there are a couple of entry points, like we have to learn thinking. So not a single thought that appears is my original creation. We had to learn language, and we had to learn thoughts from reading, from society, from growing up, from our parents talking to us. We even have to learn the thought that we are a self. So it takes about 2 years to establish in the baby, you are a self. And we have to really work at it. You know, if you're a parent, I don't have children, but I've seen it enough as well. You really have to work at making the child understand that it is a separate self with agency and volition and control. And that already says something. If it were so obvious, why aren't we born with it? No, we have to socially engineer it into the child. And so it's not so much thought that's the problem, it's believing the thoughts. If you grow up to believe you're Harry Potter, you know, you have some problems. Actually, anything you believe is questionable because it's just life as it is. And then there's thought added onto that. And I'm not saying all thought is bad or useless. There's a lot of useful thought. But it's mainly the belief that that thought is personal, that it is about a self. So the things that are really difficult and sticky and that make life more problematic is the self-referencing thoughts. So the thoughts about me and what I should do or how you see me, about what I'm good at, bad at, the judgment, all referencing this self. And this self is like a loop of thoughts. So ultimately, thinking is not a problem unless you think you are a self.
Okay, which is pretty much what people do, right?
Yes.
And of course, looping thoughts is something that creates so much pain. Maybe most of the pain comes from those looping thoughts. I don't know. So how do you get out of the loop?
Well, it's if we really knew how, like reliably, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You know, everyone would be walking around totally awake to the fact that there is no self. So I have found that this is my experience, and from speaking with many people and also guiding them a little, that there are specific ways to inquire, to ask ourselves, not ourselves, but to look into this awareness and to ask questions about what is really true that show us step by step that this self-construct is not real, so is an illusion. And these are becoming more, these types of questions, self-inquiry, as it's called, non-dual inquiry, is becoming more and more known, probably through the internet. The book, Seeing No Self, has these inquiries, and they seem to help many people because they're not from within. A lot of this was within a spiritual tradition or within Zen Buddhism, or, you know, it was in a certain language and culture and tradition that made it difficult for people to access. And now it's very much, okay, here are some things you can examine. You don't have to, but maybe you're interested. For example, what is the body? Are you in the body? How do you know? where does the body end and do you begin? So these types of questions, if they're really looked into, not in the sense of, okay, I want to give a rational answer, but to sit with them, to inquire, those can really shift the self and this illusion. That's how we can start to see it. But it takes, how it works, I don't know. Will it work for you? I don't know. What's the exact procedure? I don't know. I did my very best to write one version of that in the book, and that's all I've got.
Yeah, so again, but this is self-inquiry, and am I right in assuming that it's more, again, relying on sensing?
Yeah, it's not even so much sensing, it's direct experience without filtering it through thoughts. So it's not what do I think about the question, for example, where does my body end? Then I can get I can bring up millions of thoughts about this, what I learned in school, biology, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
This is about noticing in direct experience. If I just look right now, close my eyes or whatever, can I find a border to my body? Not the idea of a border, the actual border. Where does my elbow end and the desk begin? And the tendency is to start thinking about it. And that's the hardest parts of inquiry, is to stop listening to the thinking, because we have millions of thoughts about this, but to actually look in direct experience, to notice directly what is going on. And that leads to insight.
Yeah, I guess this is experiencing, to me, is also one thing that maybe there's somehow so little right now in how we approach going through life, or let's say learning things. And it's that the habit or the assumption is that if we have something at the tip of, our fingers, like ChatGPT, for example, that we know something. And actually, maybe the chances are that we know even less than we did, because it's like, okay, the tip of our tongue. So, yeah. And mm, so let's say you have stepped beyond the illusion. How has your life changed?
It hasn't.
Also, not less pain.
Um, it's very, again, very, very difficult to explain or talk about. So I write about this sometimes because I keep trying. The experience of a human being is exactly the same. I experience this body. I have millions of thoughts. I do the social thing. There's nothing different in experience. The only thing that you can say is that it's not mine anymore. It's not experienced as belonging to me or under my control. So there's now a body talking, and I feel that this is me. It's Kat. That's a character. But there's no idea that, oh, I am this person and I need to do this person. I need to manage her and get it right and control and judge. And it's just life unfolding. And I always notice when I try to speak about this or write about this, we don't have the words. So we sit there stuttering, and how do I describe this? Well, yeah, it's exactly the same, and yet it's completely different, because the experience doesn't change, but the feeling that there's something wrong with it, and that comes from believing that I am a self who needs to make it right, that's gone. So if I say some total bullshit here now, or if everybody, thinks this is total nonsense, or you think, oh my God, what is this? It doesn't, sure, I'm not happy about it, but it doesn't affect me the way it used to, because there's no idea that this is me. There's no identification with it.
Mhm. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is there is less pain.
Yeah, there is, you could also say no more psychological suffering. And I had a lot of that. I had a lot of that. I had the extreme sense of not being good enough and never, no matter what I did, ever being good enough. And this was always somewhere, over the horizon. And I was always trying to figure out what I could do to get there. And it seemed hopeless. And now that whole project seems ridiculous. There is no horizon. There is no not good enough. What does that even mean? Compared to what? Compared to who?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like, I think, a place that many people would really maybe dream about, right? Where I guess I don't know a lot of people who not under pressure from themselves, first of all, well, from the society or culture, but also from ourselves. Yeah.
There's a bad news to this as well. Um, and that's the part people don't want, and I didn't want, which is you're also no longer achieving anything. So I wrote 3 books. No, 3 books were written. This is not my achievement. Um, there's no feeling of, oh, I got this done, or look at that really intelligent thing I said. Just as little as there is, oh, look at that dumb thing I said, or why didn't I write a 4th book? It's both ways. And most people only want the good side of no self and don't want the, oh, okay, but that means I don't achieve. There's no praise. There's no affirmation. Yeah, there's just this.
So you're saying there is cost to everything,
Yeah.
social terms.
Yeah.
Okay, and now maybe we're getting to the end. So, what do you think the world would be like if more people would step beyond that illusion? And now it's going to be, of course, a social construct and probably hard to put into words. But let's imagine, for example, that like, I don't know, 1/3 of all the people, half of all the people have stepped beyond that illusion. Like, what?
Um, I don't know. I have no idea because in some way it doesn't matter. It's already the case. Okay, so everyone is already beyond the illusion. They just don't know. So does knowing that help? I don't know. Would that change things? Maybe not. Maybe it would. Um, but the other aspect of this is just the complete. These types of questions, they're not interesting anymore because there's only this moment, really. And so we can have imaginations about the past, the future, everybody waking up. What would that be? The honest answer to your question is, I don't care. Go ask someone else.
And maybe that's also the cost.
Yeah.
One of the costs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. Yeah. Well, that was super interesting. I mean, that was a learning experience for me. And I was trying to kind of like frame the things that I was hearing through my own social lens so that I would be maybe better able to understand it. So, and thanks everyone who was a part of this live. And if you have a question right now, that would be, I guess, a good time to ask Kat. And like anything maybe that to end it with, something that is good to know, or something maybe like a piece of advice, because we're still people, most of us haven't stepped beyond the illusion with lots of pain.
Don't worry. I don't know. It's impossible, but try not to worry because from all this trying to figure out how this works and trying to explain it and people, for myself and then finally realizing it and not understanding how I realized it and then writing a book about it, all this stuff and all this efforts. We don't really know anything, but still we talk about it. And the good news is that if there's interest in this, and even if there isn't, it's all just happening. It is already unfolding. It's like, the sun rises or the plants grow. We don't have to worry about understanding this or not. We can just totally relax, always say, get a nice drink, get some popcorn, and just watch the movie unfold. It's all good, really.
Yeah. Well, I find this is a cool end to our chat. Thank you. Yeah, a popcorn and watching a movie. Yeah. Well, thanks, Kat. What do you do, or how can people engage with you besides reading your posts, etc.?
Yeah, so I have books apparently that you can buy. I have a Substack that you can read, and I always say now that if you're desperate with a question and you really want to talk to me, you will find me. There's an email address somewhere, and I'm happy to respond. If I do, we'll see.
Promises, just, but still, don't worry.
Yes, don't worry.
It was fun, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Breath of Life. It means a lot to me. If something in this conversation touched you, consider sharing it with someone and connecting in the process. Follow The Breath of Life for new episodes and join me on Substack, where I publish my weekly writings. The link is in the show notes. Till next time.